Ladies and gentlemen, longtime friends of a free Iran, new friends of a free Iran. As you can see, I'm wearing the Ashraf 3 outfit. And it is so because this is not a topic that is only political to me, but it's deeply personal. My first encounter with the MEK many years ago came when I was invited to attend a conference in Paris on human rights in Iran. And I remember I stood proudly alongside people I deeply admired, including the late Elie Wiesel, a man who once spoke out on my behalf when I was abducted by the FARC terrorist group. And I remember that his words were light in my darkest hour. So in that conference, I wanted to follow his lead, and I felt a duty to raise my voice for others too, others who had endured injustice and continued to resist. And I spoke about the Iranian resistance, I spoke about the MEK. Days after, something unexpected happened. I became the target of a wave of emotional pressure and coordinated disinformation, not threats, but calculated attempts to shape perception and silence discussion. Articles filled with falsehoods appeared on my screen. Social media echoed slogans and smears, not debate, just manufactured outrage aimed at discouraging me or anyone who dared speak in defense of this movement. It was really troubling. I hadn't anticipated this backlash. But instead of stepping back, which was the first thing I thought I should do, I decided to dive in and do my own research. So I began by asking questions, by listening, and I spoke to people who knew the movement. I discussed with journalists and politicians that disliked the MEK, very critical to the movement. And I also met with MEK members. I attended their meetings, always very disciplined, respectful, focused. And I also visited Camp Ashraf 3 when it was being built. I saw women and men carrying construction materials in thick mud and working like ants to raise the camp. I saw a community grounded in conviction, humility, and unshakable resolve, and always smiling. And that's when the truth became clear to me. This campaign of demonization wasn't rooted in facts. It was rooted in fear. Fear from a regime that doesn't just see the MEK as an opposition, but as a credible alternative. So let's ask the real question. Why is there so much demonization against the MEK? What makes this movement so threatening to Tehran's regime? I think there are at least 6 reasons. First, I think it is their structure, your structure. You are the enemy of chaos. And you know, authoritarian regimes feed on chaos. But when resistance is focused, structured, and strategic, it becomes very dangerous. That's why the regime calls it a cult. Not because the label fits, but because an effective opposition unmasks what they really are. And in a sort of inverted mirror tactic, they need to accuse their strongest opponent to be just precisely what they are themselves. Second reason I would point out at their leadership, a woman they cannot silence. Yes, the MEK is led by an indomitable woman they cannot control, and we love you for that. Mariam Rajavi is a Muslim woman calling for a secular democratic Iran. She defends gender equality, freedom of belief, separation of religion and state, and in a region where authoritarianism and patriarchy often go hand in hand, her leadership is both revolutionary and empowering because it threatens the core of their system, of the social organization they want to impose on you by dividing families, dividing your society, by gagging women. But the regime can't defeat Mariam's ideas, so they attack her personally. But that desperation only shows how much they fear you. Third, the MEK is dangerous because they are credible. They are a credible alternative. And let's talk about the 10-point plan. Mariam's 10-point plan includes free and fair elections, equality between men and women, abolition of the death penalty, freedom of speech, religion, and press, minority rights, a nuclear-free Iran, a market economy. So you see, the MEK presents more than protests. It presents a plan for the future. And that's not just rhetoric, that's governing agenda. And that's very dangerous. The fourth reason, it's because the MEK is a network inside Iran. Wow. You see, the MEK is not just in exile. It has a growing network inside Iran, men and women of all conditions and ages, young people, students, workers, risking their lives to resist from within. That gives the MEK something very rare: legitimacy on the ground. And that's what the regime fears the most. Fifth, the MEK has a history, a legacy of resistance. All of you know that. The MEK resistance is not new. It has spanned more than 60 years. You stood against the Shah's dictatorship when that was very dangerous. You stood against Khomeini's theocracy when thousands were silenced. You have faced executions, torture, exile, and you have never stopped. This is not a fringe group. This is a political force with experience. And six, you have been willing to pay the ultimate price. The cost, maximum sacrifice. Because when we talk about the MEK, and you know this better than I do, we're talking, and we have to remember, the cost. We're talking about 120,000 men, and women, members and supporters that have been imprisoned and executed, tortured or driven from their homes. So this is not a movement for profit or for power. This is a grassroots force grounded in principle and having the willingness to sacrifice everything for freedom, and no lies can erase that history. No propaganda can undo that truth. So what must be added? That we need to ensure that the MEK is recognized for what it is, the only way out from the Iranian global threat. Again, why so much demonization? Because the MEK is not just a background noise, because it is the voice of those who refuse to surrender. It is the foundation of change, its vision, its plan. It is the face of hope for the people of Iran. And not only that, the MEK is the only option. It's not an option, it's the only option. That's why it's not enough to reject the lies. The fight for freedom in Iran is the front line in the global struggle for justice and peace. It's time for the free world to embrace its mission. The tyranny today is at its weakest point. Let's act in unity and courage to contribute to defeat the most vicious global threat since the end of the Second World War. We have here in this panel brilliant minds, years of experience. We need to act now. As you were saying, we need to go to action, and we must all stand with the MEK, because only by supporting the MEK we can begin to build a world grounded in lasting peace. So, today, from the eternal city, Rome, we can and we must declare to Khomeini, your time is up. Vaqtet taman shode.